There's a quiet frustration that a lot of people carry to work every day. It's not that they're lazy. It's not that they don't care. It's not that they don't want to work. It's that they're completely exhausted. They're exhausting themselves trying to control things that they never actually had control over, but the illusion that they did was sold to them throughout their life. And the cost of that mistake is your energy, your confidence, and your future. So today I want to strip back to something that's a lot more practical. What you actually control in work and what you don't. Because once you stop fighting the wrong battles and focus on the ones you know you can win, everything starts to shift. And that's what Own Your Work is all about. The first thing that you need to focus on is your boundaries. When your work starts and when it ends. Yes, you don't have control over that. In a lot of cases, you get a shift or you get assigned the opening hours to your job, but you signed up for that. That's part of taking the job. Unfortunately, we don't have control over everything that happens. However, if our hours are 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or 8 to 5, 6, we can control what time we start our work. We don't have to come in 5 minutes early. We don't have to stay 15 minutes late. We don't have to work through our lunch. We can come in and start work at 8 and we can leave at 5. Regardless of whatever catastrophe happens to be going on around us, we have control over what time we actually start work and what time we actually end it. When you tolerate, what you tolerate in life starts to become normal. And then normal turns into expectation. And when you stop fulfilling those expectations, people think you're the one that's being abnormal, even though you're actually just enforcing boundaries, the boundaries that were set by the company in the first place. We have to learn how to say no without over explaining or giving too much detail. If you don't want to work late, it doesn't matter what the reason is. You're not required. And if they're trying to put a requirement on you, then that is something that kind of is an illegal gray area, but you don't have to do it. And if you feel like you do have to, then there's something else going on there. You should be working the hours that you agreed to, the hours that you signed up for, by all means. But you don't have to do anything extra or anything more than you want to do. And be careful, because if you want to do more, make sure that the boundary is set, that you're not being taken advantage of just to forward their agenda, rather than something that's going to actually end up rewarding you in the end. We have to also set boundaries about our time for thinking, for learning, and for rest. We have to be sure that if we're going to leave at 5 o'clock, we're not checking emails after the fact. We have to be sure that if we are in a position where we're on vacation and if something happens at the office, we let them handle it. We have to be sure that we're enforcing whatever boundaries we set, especially when it comes to our rest. We need time to recharge and reset, to clear our minds so that we can make good, functional decisions that are actually going to move us forward. And if we don't have the proper rest, if we don't have the proper separation, that's when we start making decisions that end up being detrimental to our future rather than actually helping us. That's when we start feeling burnt out and exhausted and like we're just getting up to work, and that's the entirety of our lives. We have to also remind ourselves that boundaries shouldn't be viewed as rebellion. Boundaries should be normal. Boundaries should be a part of life and really are about you being sustainable, you being able to live to fight another day. And if anything or anybody is in your life that doesn't want that, then that's definitely something that you need to question. If you don't define your boundaries, your job, your boss, your life will. The other thing we have control over is we also have control over the job that we do inside of our job. So whatever the job description is, whatever we've signed up to be responsible for, we are ultimately the people that are responsible to fulfill those obligations, right? We are responsible for the quality of our output. We are responsible for being reliable and consistent within those boundaries that we've set. We are responsible for our reputation over time and ensuring that that reputation has positivity attached to it rather than negativity. So that has to do with whether or not we are raising red flags that are actually warranted, or are we just reacting emotionally, whether we are able to handle stress or coworkers or difficult situations, with professionalism rather than reactionary. All of those types of things, whether we come in with a good attitude, all of those types of things are what we can stake our reputations on later on when it does matter, when we do have to pull back on it. We also have to make sure that we are becoming useful in ways that can travel with you, that are not exclusive to this particular job, this particular function, this particular company. You want to be able to internalize any new skill sets, any new systems or processes that may come up in this job so that you can reapply them in a future position, whether it be a computer system, whether it just be, a template that people use in order to further their output or become more efficient, or whether it is, a way of handling a difficult coworker that you've never had to before. You want to make sure that whatever skills you're acquiring aren't exclusive to this position, something that you can actually uh, reapply to something later on in life if you're up for it. And focus on stacking those skills rather than focusing on getting another title or maybe a 2% raise. Focus on the skills. Focus on expanding your narrative so that you are adaptable and that you can make sure that you are able to go with what any changes might be coming down the pike, either within this position and company or beyond. You may not own the company, but you do own your craft. So honing in on that craft and making it the best that you can possibly make it will always end up benefiting you in the long run. We also have enormous control over our personal health, our well-being in every capacity, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, if that's your thing, psychological. Energy is a huge career asset. Where you focus your energy has a lot to do with how your career progresses and how your future unfolds before you. So make sure you're putting a lot of your energy into things that actually are going to be beneficial to you in the long run, and not in things that you don't have control over or in things that don't actually matter in the macro sense. Burnout is often regarded as a badge of honor, but it is not and should not be. Burnout is a byproduct that means not from doing too much. It means from putting your energy into things that don't actually give you anything back. It's important that we get enough sleep. It's important that we get enough exercise and move our bodies as much as we can. And it's important that we take time for mental space. So that is also, the rest and relaxation thing coming in, but also not being as distracted, not being on our phone so much, not, binge watching on television, reading, taking time for a walk and taking in some nature, spending time playing games and developing memories with the people we love and, really forging those connections. All of that stuff will make sure that we have mental clarity. And that's the ultimate goal, right? You need to be physically able to do everything. You need to be emotionally okay, which was where the rest and relaxation comes in. And you also need to have your mental stability and your psychology all working together so that you can make good decisions for yourself and your family and not be taken advantage of or be so burnt out that you're just following a pattern to enrich somebody else's life. We have to remember that our nervous system is extremely tied to our professional toolkit. We need to make sure we take care of it at all costs. It is very, very important to your future. One of the biggest things that we have to remember, and I know I struggle with this myself a lot, is our attitude and our approach. Curiosity should be at the forefront, and bitterness should definitely be on the back burner. If it's at all possible for us to not exercise our disappointment, our unhappiness, our disregard for anything that's happening in our workplace, it's really something we should probably try to avoid at all costs. We can be curious, we can be forthcoming and ask questions, but also not putting ourselves in a position where we're going to be set up for disappointment or we're going to let any kind of negativity take over our position and take over our decision-making process while we're in our position. We have to make sure that we have calm competence instead of being extremely reactionary or consistently reactionary. We don't want to be one of those people that just reacts. We want to be somebody who listens and thinks through their response. There's a big, big difference. And most people are so burnt out that they just react emotionally and not with any thought at all to what that reaction or their words or their tone any after effects it may have. And that ultimately puts them in a position where it's very difficult to see them in any other position or progressing in their careers in any way. And that's definitely a way where you would not own your work and you would not have control over your future. So we want to avoid that if at all possible. We have to also remember that no matter what promotion or title we get, no matter how much extra money we get, no matter what praise or prestige we get, it is not a fix to chronic burnout or chronic exhaustion. Owning your work is about ensuring that everything is intentional that we do, and that anything unintentional or habitual, we question and make sure that it actually has value to what we're doing. The value that you give to your output, to your position, comes from being steady, comes from being reliable, comes from being professional. So those should be the priorities at every cost. And if someone is trying to push you, doesn't give you a chance to think about your decision or your response or how you would approach something, then that means that they're just worried about their agenda. And they probably most likely just want you to say what they want to hear, don't really want your thoughts. So make sure you protect that as best as you can and make sure that you are not settling for that as if that should be law or that's the way it should be, because it shouldn't. A good leader wants you to think for yourself and wants you to be critical about your thinking, wants to hear your ideas, and should be hiring you to add some kind of value and perspective to the situation, to the overall department. So if they're not rewarding that in any way or they're disparaging that in any way, it's a big sign that that's a toxic environment and that's something you should consider moving on from. In whatever work that you're doing, no matter what it is, whether it's for yourself, whether you're working for somebody else, whether it's physical, mental, office work, etc. It's really important to make sure that what we're doing aligns with our values, and our definitions of success. Too many times we get caught up in other people's version of success, what they deem as successful or what they're trying to sell you is successful. And in lots of cases, it doesn't actually work for us individually and at our lifestyle that we want. What winning actually looks like for you is really important to remember. It's really important to keep in mind. For a while, I literally had it on my phone, and every couple hours I would have an alarm that would set to remind me, I am doing this for this. This is why I'm still here. This is my ultimate goal of still staying in this job, even though I hate it and even though it's burning me out, because I know it's leading me somewhere. It reminds you that there's a bigger picture. It reminds you that there's a reason, there's a why for you doing what you're doing. And if you can't have that why, you don't know that why, you can't find it, then you really need to sit down and take a step back and try to figure out what that is. And then to try to figure out if what you're doing is actually servicing that why. We have to make sure that we compartmentalize money versus time versus autonomy. We need all three to function in today's world, of course, but we don't need all of them to overlap. We can still have autonomy while still being able to pay our bills and still having time for ourselves and our loved ones. It's up to us to make sure that we set those boundaries to ensure that all three of them not only align with our values and what work we're doing, but also that we make sure each one of them is addressed on a regular basis. Alignment in your life will always the reward that you get back from having that alignment is so much more powerful than any approval or external validation that you could get. Trust me, it feels so much better to be able to know that everything that I'm doing is something I actually believe in, something that's actually helping people, and something that I truly value in my own life and want to just extend the service out to other people to help them with their lives. It beats any promotion I ever had, any salary I ever had, any kind of prestige I ever got from any job, from any coworker or boss ever in my life. It's fantastic when you can find that alignment. It takes a while, but when you can find it, it is amazing and it's definitely worth pursuing. A career doesn't have to just look good, okay? You don't want a career that just looks good on the surface. What's the point of that? What's the point of looking good if you can't back it up? You can look good to a lot of people. You can look good on paper. You can look good with your impression and reputation, but it could still feel wrong for you. That's why that alignment is so important, because if you don't have it and it does feel wrong for you, you're going to get burnt out regardless of how much effort you put in and regardless of how much money you have or how it looks on the outside. If you borrow someone else's definition of success, You're living their life, not yours. This is something that I always harp on a lot, and I always have to remind myself a lot of as well. It's another one that your social and professional circles mean everything. The people you surround yourself with have a huge influence on the end result of what you're trying to achieve. It doesn't have to be specifically to a project, it just has to be to a normal, everyday life decision. But who is in your life normalizes what kind of growth you're going to achieve, if any at all. If you're someone that's constantly negative, constantly making excuses, constantly telling you why things can't be done a certain way or why we can't move the needle, then we know that that's somebody that doesn't truly want us to be successful and happy. They don't truly want us to progress and get out of that specific position that we're in. They want us to stay there for whatever reasons. It doesn't necessarily have to be negative or personal in any way. It's just that they don't want to see you change anything. And that is a huge sign that they're not looking for you to grow. And in life, if you're not growing, you're staying still and you might as well just be a tree and never go anywhere or do anything. And what's the point of that, right? The point of life is to live. So we don't want to just sit there and be a tree. We want to be able to blow in the wind. It is difficult because a lot of people in our lives, we've had in our lives for long periods of time, and we always want to think the best. We always want to believe that they want what's best for us. But the truth is, it just isn't always true. And if someone has got you constantly stuck in complaining or making excuses, or you feel like, you can't be honest about what you want in life and what kind of, dreams you have, then that is a big sign as well that that person might not be someone that you want to spend a lot of time or give a lot of energy to. Proximity matters as well. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to cut people out of your life. You just have to make sure that you don't share everything with them, especially things that are extremely important to you or things that they're not going to be aligned with. It's always important to protect ourselves as best as we can and then find people in our life that want us to grow, that want us to succeed, that want to help us and push us in the ways that we probably can't push ourselves, and then give us opportunities that we didn't even know were available to us. But we won't be able to find them unless we make room for their energy to come into our circle. So we have to start thinking about quietly updating our environments and making sure that our energy is going again towards as much positivity as possible so that our growth and our lifestyle can be exactly what we want it to be. Remember that whatever future you are building relies on what you're doing today, what you're doing right now, the skill set that you're building, the people that you're talking to about this, the people that you're bouncing ideas off of, the side projects you're working on, the optionality of anything that you have, right? Being able to see that you have more than one option, that you aren't stuck in one place for a long period of time, that you are building long-term leverage. You are building, like I said, expanding that skill set that can be applied to many different things and not just one specific job or position or company. You don't want to settle for short-term comfort. You want to build that long-term leverage. You want to keep that going as much as possible. That's what gives you options. That's what keeps you off the hamster wheel. That's what helps you mitigate any unforeseen circumstances like layoffs, like changes in industry, like cost of living rises. If you have all of that long-term leverage, then you have options, you have ways that you can mitigate those effects on your life. Not that you won't have any negative effects, but you can at least mitigate them for it's not devastating and a complete catastrophe, and you're left wondering what happened at the end of the day. Take control of everyday decisions in order to build that future that you actually want so that you can reap the outcomes. You can reap the rewards of it someday. Part of building that leverage is paying very close attention to where your money goes. This is something that is extremely important. You have to really take care of your lifestyle, especially if you're in a lifestyle that you want to maintain right now. Right. And you don't want to sacrifice, you don't want to give anything up. You have to make some hard choices. Okay. We have to have safety nets. We have to think about lifestyle inflation versus comfort and freedom. Yes, it is extremely comfortable to be able to just come home at the end of the day, sit on your couch, order food, and watch TV. Yes, that's fantastically comfortable, but it's not really freedom, is it? And it's not really a life either, because if you're too tired to do anything, then what's the point of making all the money in the world? What's the point of having the best car, having the best clothes? You don't want to get off the couch. So why are you wasting your money on it? You have to make sure that you figure out those priorities. You have to know every dollar where it's going to, every pound where it's going to, depending on where you are. Um, when because people want you to rent things in order for you to feel more comfortable so that you don't have to so you don't have leverage over them later, right? If you are renting a really expensive car and even financing is renting at the end of the day, you still don't own that until you pay it off. And then when you pay it off, it's so much less value than it was when you first bought it. So are you buying it for a reason? Do you actually have the money for it? Do you actually need it? Is there a way you can get around having a car at all? Of course, that's just one example, right? There's thousands of examples that I could give you. It's really more about making sure that we're creating negotiating power, that we are creating systems in in our own lives, specific systems with a lot of intention, so that our money is working for us rather than us working for money to pay somebody else that could give a shit about us. Renting, all that stuff that we rent are not rewards. They're other people's systems to keep you comfortable so that they can have the lifestyle they want. Take back control, use that money for something else to get the life that you want. So let's talk about the stuff that we don't control. Okay, this is where a lot of relief happens, was when you start to really take this in, then you start to realize that, I don't need to put my energy towards that. And ultimately, wherever energy goes, wherever focus flows, energy goes, right? So we start focusing less on the things we can't control. We start focusing more on the things we can and things we're intentional about. Then we're going to start to have a better life. We're going to start to own our life and own our work a lot more. One of the biggest things that we have to remember is we can't control the system. The corporate system specifically, which is the model of is in most businesses in most developed countries in today's world. It's a hierarchy, right? It's a dictatorship. It's not a democracy in any way. I did a whole video on that. I'll link it in the description box below if you guys want to see that part. But we have to remember that it's just a system for them, for the people who own it to have the lifestyle they want, not for you to own your own work. It gives you incentives, but incentives aren't the same as loyalty. Incentives are carrots to keep you running on the treadmill. I mean, just envision that for a second. You're running on a treadmill and there's someone behind you to the side of you holding a stick with a carrot at the end. The carrot could be a nice luxury car. The carrot could be a nice uh, piece of jewelry, a nice watch. A carrot could be a big house. A carrot could be a promotion, a title, a salary increase. You just keep running on that treadmill because you think you're going to get that carrot. When in reality, they keep turning up the speed on the treadmill and you don't get anywhere near the carrot. We can't control what carrots are in front of us. We can't control the person necessarily telling us that we need to speed up. But we have to make sure that we're not participating in those systems in that way. The systems are there for them to protect themselves and their businesses and their interests and their lifestyle, not yours. We have to remember that. And we have to stop making it personal when structural behavior is inevitable. When they do things like reorganize or forego raises or bonuses or reduce incentives in some way or benefits in some way, the system is going to do that on a regular basis as much as it possibly can in order to make sure their bottom line is what they want it to be. They don't care what the ultimate effects are to you. So we have to stop caring about that stuff in the sense that it's actually something we have control over and something that's actually going to overall affect our lives. We have to start controlling and focusing on the things we can, things that actually do affect our lives. We also cannot control other people's actions or responses, right? We can be the most professional, we can be the most calm, the most thoughtful about any response or any discussions that we have. And there's definitely going to be somebody out there who just isn't the same. They're going to respond in their own emotional way or their own reactionary way. We cannot control that. We also can't control coworkers' efforts. We can't control office politics. We can't really control when our recognition is going to, when we're going to be recognized. And we definitely can't outperform dysfunction, okay? And most places are somewhat dysfunction because they have people in them, and most people are somewhat dysfunctional. So we have to remember that that is not necessarily going to move the needle for us. Complaining about it and putting energy and negativity into that is not going to help. It's not the same as venting. We do need to take time to vent. Just make sure we're venting to good avenues, people that we can trust. And if you can't do it at work, then make sure you're doing it to someone that you can trust outside of the work environment. It is important to do that so that, as we said, we can have mental clarity, but we can't put any more energy into it than that, because we're not going to get anything back. It's not going to change, and we're not going to be able to change them or control them. You're not going to have any control at the end of the day of any of your boss's decisions, whether it comes to promotions, raises, workloads, budget cuts, strategy changes, or even their own responses, reactions, and mood swings. Silence is information, but it's not something that you can control. You're not going to be able to convince them that you are up for this promotion if they haven't seen it by now, right? It's going to be very little that you're going to be able to do. And ultimately, it's their decision at the end of the day, and they're gonna choose somebody that they think fits what their version of the culture, what they want, their lifestyle to be, not necessarily what's best for the company or what's best for its employees. So just make sure that you remember that you only have so much control over how your work is valued and what the rewards are from the company based on that value. You can control what you do, and you can do it to the best of your ability, but after that, you really don't have any control left. You also can't control the past. Okay, we've all had it. We all have pasts. We all have missed chances and missed opportunities. We've all had bad managers, toxic coworkers, companies that rear-ended us and screwed us. We've taken lots and lots of wrong turns in our life. We've made bad decisions. Some of us have been really terrible people in our past, but that's not necessarily who we have to be today or in the future. Okay, we don't have to bring all of that with us. We don't have to make sure that that is our legacy. We can change it at any point at any time. That is something we do have control over. We don't have control over what's happened up until this point, but we do have control over this moment and the future. So let's use it. The only usable part of your past is the lessons that you learn from it. So take those lessons for what they are, do what you have to do to make amends if that is part of your past, and then focus on how you can fix it and do better moving forward. This next one is something a lot of people use, especially nowadays, as reasons for them to be complacent and stagnant. It is news, politics, government, world events. Now, we can be aware of what's happening in the world without it being an obsession or an excuse. We have some control over governments in the fact that a lot of us in developed countries anyway will have, a vote, and will be able to have some kind of pressure put on, local lawmakers and things like that when it comes to protesting, when it comes to certain laws or certain bills that they're trying to pass. Of course, we can use that and we can exercise that. But in the end, we only have a little bit of influence and a little bit of voice. We don't have control over what the government's going to do overall. We don't have control over what other countries are going to do. We don't have control over the news, how it's going to come out, how it's going to be, given to us, and whether it's good or bad. And we certainly don't have any real control over politics other than the things that I've already mentioned. After you vote, do what you have to do to become a conscious voter and make sure you're voting your conscience and not somebody else's. But after that, you really need to focus back on your little sphere. You don't need to be completely aware all the time of everything, but you can't sit there and pretend things aren't happening. You have to find a balance, okay? You doom scrolling doesn't build careers. And if you want to build a career and you want to build a future where you own your work, then you have to make sure that you're not letting all of that other negativity get into you. Because again, it's a control mechanism from their point of view in order to perpetuate and secure their lifestyle. And you are responsible for yours, not theirs. So make sure that you remember that when you're on your phone, when you're watching television, that you find that balance and you turn it all off when you need to so that you can focus on the things that really matter to you. Markets, industries, and cost of living. I did a video about this a little bit too. Again, I will link it in the description box below, talking about how the cost of living isn't a crisis in my eyes. It's not something that we shouldn't be worried about. And of course, it's affecting a lot of people and we should be aware of that. But prices are always going to rise, okay? Industries are always going to change. Markets are always going to go up and down. And things are always going to adapt. Nothing in life is certain except taxes and death. All right, that's a cliche and a stereotype, but it's very, very true. We have to remember cycles are constantly going to happen. Life is always ever changing. We can never go back. We can only do the best that we can and learn from it and move forward. We really have to set ourselves up to be adaptable. And that's what I was saying about building our leverage earlier. That is the adaptability that I'm talking about. So that you can, if an industry changes or there's mass layoffs, you are not left wondering what the hell happened. You're not left as part of the aftermath. You can build from there and you can still create the life that you want, or at least a version of it that you want, that you're comfortable with, based on the leverage that you've built every single day by working towards that every single day. The people that get caught in the crossfire, the people that get caught unaware, are the people that just are complacent and they just go in these cycles and they expect somebody else to change things for them. It's not going to change. Costs are always going to rise, especially as more and more people are, in the world, and we become more and more global. Markets, again, are always going to go up and down and change, and people are finicky. People are going to like something one day, and then 2 or 3 years later, they're going to change their minds and they're going to say that that is crap and they're on to something else. We have to adapt. If we can't adapt, then we can't exist. And as human beings, we've gotten this far. So I know we all have the ability to do it. Lastly, we have to remember that we can't control other people's judgment of us. Okay. Whether it's online, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, whether it's friends, family, coworkers, strangers on the street. All right. We don't have control over it, especially people who don't live your life or don't even know most of your story. Why do we put so much value in other people's opinions? Honestly, I know I did for a really long time. It was because I had so much insecurity that I was dealing with based on other events that happened in my life. But they're not in my life. They don't have to feed my kid. They don't have to, live in my shoes, and they don't have to deal with the things that I deal with every day. Just like I don't live their life. I don't know what they're going through. I don't know what they have to deal with day to day. And so in no position to judge them. So why should I care about their judgment? Approval is a very unstable currency, guys. It is not something to be relied upon because, as I said, people are finicky and they will change that on a dime. All you have to do is say something, especially nowadays, it's quite volatile. You just say something wrong, or you say an opinion about something that might not be, the norm or the majority, and all of a sudden, you've lost a whole bunch of people, you've lost a whole bunch of approval. That's why it's important to be aligned. It's important to have that leverage that we talked about, the adaptability, and important to, earn respect from the people that are actually going to give you some respect back. You get that not by over explaining yourself and by trying to get everybody in, but by being consistent and being honest and making sure you're true to what you believe. Not spinning a narrative, not trying to protect an image, but being honest and real and authentic. The truth that most people don't want to accept is that you feel stuck not because you lack opportunity, but because you're focusing on the wrong things. You're expecting some magic lever to appear in front of you so you can just hit it and all of a sudden everything is same in front of you. Everything is brand new. And then all of a sudden everything's brand new and hunky-dory in front of you. And that's not the way things work in life at all. When you put your energy where you actually have control, you start to build momentum and you start to get energy back. And it's a transferable reaction. It's a great transfer of transaction back and forth. It's this transaction back and forth where you just continually get more energy. So you want to put more and more energy in. It's like a snowball. You're pushing it up the hill, and that's all the energy and that's all the momentum. And all of a sudden you'll find yourself at the top of the hill and the snowball starts to roll on its own and get bigger and bigger and bigger without you putting barely any effort into it. That's what we want to get to. But it is really, really difficult to push that snowball up the hill. It takes a lot of consistency. It takes tons of energy and time. It takes tons of focus. And it takes a lot of blocking out all of the naysayers, all of the doomsayers, all of the people that, don't want you to succeed because they can't do that. They can't push that snowball up the hill. But you can. Anybody can if they really want to. Controlling your work and owning your work is not about quitting tomorrow. It's not always even about, owning your own business or running your own thing on the side or any of that. It's about quietly reclaiming the ownership pieces every single day until all of a sudden the pieces start to fit and form a life that you actually want. You have control over your boundaries, you have control over your skill set, you have control over your health, you have control over your values, and you have control over your future and how you put yourself out in the world. You don't control systems, you don't control other people, you don't control markets, you don't control the company you work for or the system that we live in. But if you can learn how to adapt and use it to your advantage, that's how you can own your work. That's the moments that you can accept those distinctions. That's when work stops owning you and you can start having more control. We at Own Your This is what Own Your Work is all about. Practical thinking for people who want stability without having to surrender life, without having to completely upheave their entire lifestyle or everything they've worked towards up until this point. If you are in the second half of your life or your career and you want to start building a better life, you want to start building that security and that leverage more intentionally, that's what we're all about. So please subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 people by the end of the year. It's a lofty goal because we're in February, but we would really love to try to get there so we can try to help as many people as possible. Um, it would be great if we want more people to have ownership over their lives and ownership over the noise so they don't get taken advantage of. They don't get pushed into positions or jobs or situations that they don't have control over, and that they can finally figure out what they want in life and live the life they deserve to live. Own what you can, let go of what you can't, because that's how real growth starts. Wishing you nothing but happiness and success. We'll see you next time.